What's up, everybody? We are live, episode 10. Now I can do two hands, so I used to do it one hand. So we are live, episode 10 of The Secret Show on Take on the World TV. It's so secret, we don't even know when these are happening. And we have a really funny story about even today about how we completely forgot. Yeah. Even so, it's so secretive to us as well. So if you're watching, please share this. Please get the word out that we're going live right now. So jump into the comments. Because you guys are going to want to ask some questions. Before we announce today's guest, unless you're reading,
if they can read, they know.
Yes, they know. So right now, what we're doing, if you guys are unfamiliar with us and watching us for the first time, we are hosting our annual Take on the World conference again, 2019. That website is takeontheworld19.com. We have a full conference.
It's really a retreat.
Yes, it's really a retreat.
Essentially, yeah. Because it's 4 days long, jam-packed with everything you can possibly imagine for the whole entire family. So we've got worship concerts. We've got over 70 presentations with 30 different speakers. Nowhere else are you going to have this opportunity to come together with like-minded believers and friends and just get immersed in education from incredible individuals who have studied intensely for so long, and they make it a part of their mission and their passion to share it with everyone. Yeah. So young and old, it's for everyone.
Yeah, and we have a full kids program, a full teens program. So right now what we're doing is we're doing a vinyl decal fundraiser, and it is our moniker, which is Take on the World, Light Up the Darkness. And that is our new moniker for 2019. And you can get these at our website. These are $5.50, including shipping donation. And all the proceeds go right to our kids program. We're going to have an live animal show, bounce houses, all sorts of fun stuff for the kids. Giant slip and slide. We have zip lining,
games.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. We have art classes. And so without further ado, and enough of us chatting, we want to introduce you to somebody that we have wanted at Take on the World for a while and just never worked out schedule-wise. And that was due to his profession. That is Michael Mize. So, Michael, thank you so much for being on our show today. And we're so excited that you're going to be at Take on the World 19.
Thanks very much for having me. And I'm also just beyond thrilled to be a part of all of this. It's been something we've been looking forward to as a family, and I've been preparing for now for the better part of 8 months. So I told Liz when she invited me, I feel like an amateur in a world of professionals, but I'm really excited to get to be a part of this, and glad to be here today.
Awesome. Well, you've kind of been sort of out of, let's say, the limelight. You had a consistent show that you were doing, and you were a guest very often on Now You See TV in those first early years of Now You See TV. Why don't you share a little bit about what you did and what your whole ministry is all about?
Sure. I was a high school art teacher for 18 years, the past 14 of which had been at one high school. And I have long been, even though I'm an art teacher, I've long been an avid fan of science, avid reader, and just have always enjoyed deconstructing how our Creator has made things. And that's always been something that has been incredibly affirming to my own faith and has really strengthened my belief a lot. And so that was something that I was always just very eager to share. And just being a teacher myself, that came kind of easy to want to assemble things to make it both engaging and informative, so that we could do the same thing for others, especially people that are young or newer to the faith, that they could have that same kind of affirmation that when you look at the world around us and see the things that the Father has made and understand how the complexity of things, it is such a testament to His wisdom and authority and power. And so I had been a long time subscriber to Answers in Genesis magazine, and there was one time there was an article in there that was really directed towards teenagers, but it was basically just a short little blurb that was like, maybe you could start a creation club at your high school. And that I was like, yeah, maybe I could. And so I went to administration. It was actually over the summer. I went to administration with the idea, fully anticipating that they were going to tell me, yeah, I'm afraid we can't do that at public school. And they were completely accepting of it. And I never got any flack from it at all. In fact, a lot of support, prayer support, resource support from both fellow teachers and administration. I'm confident I was the butt of numerous jokes, but thankfully all of that stayed, stayed behind my back. So, and so I did that for 4 or 5 years, sponsored a club just called Creation Club there at the high school. We met once a month for 27 minutes. So, I mean, it wasn't much. So I was definitely guilty of always trying to cram far too much information into one time. But over the course of the years, I had developed just a number of slideshows for the various topics that we had covered. And my wife, who is ultimately the source of most of my good ideas, had said once, why don't you put these together and put them into videos and share them online? And I was like, it's a great idea. So that's kind of how the YouTube channel started. And then, I was fortunate enough to, invited by John Pounders and Jake Grant to be a part of Now You See TV, and shared most of the videos that I've done on there. I don't have a whole lot because through all of this, I mean, I was remaining a full-time teacher, full-time dad, and so it was really just a labor of love with whatever little scraps of free time I could put together. And so in the past year, though, things have really turned on their head. We became convinced in would have been early 2018 that the Father was really, he wasn't asking anymore. He was telling us that it was time to come out of the public schools. And so we took a huge leap of faith, and I resigned from my full-time job so that I could begin homeschooling our two kids we have 2 teenagers, 13 and 15. And I renovated my garage into the studio space that I'm in now, and have begun teaching, art classes and workshops for kids, teens, and adults out of this space, homeschooling my kids full time, and then doing what I can to continue making and selling my own work. So Creation Club, unfortunately, has really taken a pretty far back seat right now, and it's something that I still very much am passionate about. And looking on down the road, parents know that, I mean, you blink your eyes and it's over with as far as the kids are old. So another 4 or 5 years, and I'm gonna have all kinds of time. So I'm just trusting the Father with that, and trying to keep my eyes fixed on whatever I feel like He's got me doing right now. So, and that leads us to you guys.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, if you guys have not seen any of his professional videos or his presentations, you can tell the quality of him being a teacher. One, how he knows how to present things, but the powerfulness of the videos. Some of them are pretty short and very easily shareable, and we've shared some of those already on Take on the World, and
they are just beautifully done.
Yeah,
you have such a talent, and I know whenever we would see you come on Now You See, I'm like, oh, we gotta watch this.
Yeah,
because I mean, we're both creative, and so that's sort of how we learn best, by having all those different graphics and the way that you just masterfully put it together. I know I messaged you early on, like, how in the world do you do this? They're so good.
We're sitting here doing our biblical health shows going,
we're such amateurs.
Yeah, so we were just embarrassed, when you're putting out this great work. So you definitely set the bar high for us.
we can compare notes at the conference then.
Well, yeah. So so that's a little bit about your ministry and what you've done. I like to take it back on the Secret Show of because that's what, if people know you, they already know that about you. And oftentimes when they hear you speak about creation, you speak about something you're going to be talking about this year, which is going to be the biblical feast and some of your artwork entailing that, which we're super excited about as well. But why don't you share, your story about how you even came into faith, and what's that look like for Michael Mize in your life?
Yeah, so I was raised Roman Catholic, and we attended church every Sunday. My parents got divorced when I was 7, and that really left a scar on our heart for sure. And I think indirectly is part of what led to me questioning God. And so as soon as we hit the early teen years, my older brother and I both just became very adamant that you're just not going to church anymore. My mom, living as a single mom, I think grew weary of the knockdown, drag out fight to try and get us to go every week. And so we kind of came to this compromise that we wouldn't have to go anymore to Sunday church as long as whenever my grandma was in town, we went without any difficulty, so the kind of maintain the charade for the benefit of my grandma. And so, we compromised with that. But then when I got into high school, I believe it was high school, and really started to get indoctrinated myself into the whole evolutionary worldview, man, I clung to that as, well, here you go. Here's evidence that supports the doubts I've been having anyway. And so that became my evidence. So I very much became a card-carrying atheist at that point, and took no shortage of pleasure in making fun of believers and kind of mocking them and chastising them for their beliefs, all throughout high school and my early years in college. And around that time is when my wife and I started dating. I've been married. It will be 22 years this September. We've been together for 26 years because we dated for 4 years before, but I've known her since the 4th grade. So it's hard pressed to remember a time in my life when I didn't know her or hold her in high regard. We started dating right after I graduated high school, and she had always been a strong believer. And so, one of the big regrets in my life is the negative influence I had on her early in our relationship, because I definitely was an anchor to her faith in terms of just kind of dragging her away from the closeness she had with the Father. And so, flash forward through our early 20s, pretty much living textbook example of how not to do life. And we eventually got pregnant. We tried for a number of years, and that was very discouraging for a while. But we eventually did get pregnant, and it was around that time that my wife began reading the Left Behind series. Which, obviously, disclaimer, I don't agree with the pre-trib rapture presented in there, but at the time, this was right when they were coming out. And so a lot of people have a testimony, I think, that includes those being a gateway, into faith. And she tore through those. And so I couldn't help but kind of get curious about it, and so I started reading, I think, a few of them. But really the clincher was my daughter being born. And man, as soon as I laid eyes on her, it was, that veil was lifted, and it was just, there is so much more going on here than I'm giving credit to. And, in hindsight, now if I'm perfectly honest with myself, I don't think I'd never really convinced myself that there wasn't a God. I just become really good at ignoring him and reminding myself of all the rehearsed reasons and strategies that I'd picked up over the years to kind of placate myself, and put that part of my heart and my mind to rest again. But yeah, as soon as I laid eyes on my daughter, it was game over. And so we went home. Yeah, and that's when I started reading the Left Behind series. Now that I'm talking it through, that I remember that. So I started reading that, and it didn't take long before I don't remember the name of the pilot, but one of the main characters in the series was this pilot, and early on in the series, he goes through the whole prayer of salvation. I don't think it was the older guy. It wasn't the Kirk Cameron character, but the older guy.
That's Buck, right? Kirk Cameron's
I think
Buck.
Buck was the Kirk Cameron guy.
Yeah.
And then he sort of had an older guy that anyway, but I
it's
remember
Nicolas Cage in the new movie.
Oh gosh, yeah.
the pilot's Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
I do know that. Hey, this Sneaker Show, we go off the cuff sometimes.
That's okay. So I remember reading him going through the whole prayer of salvation, and I remember putting the book down and kind of doing the same thing myself. And so my wife was thrilled with that. So we began, we found the local church and started to get active in things. And we kind of church shopped around for a while. But I was always grateful, especially now looking back in hindsight, I was always grateful that the Father pricked my heart when he did, because my children have not known anything other than mom and dad, now coming under the authority of the Father. And they've always known him their whole life. So I'm just forever grateful for that. And then, if I'd flash forward a few years, was in a men's fraternity group. That's a curriculum that a lot of mainstream churches have gone through. And so a men's Bible study, essentially. And I remember one of the pastors just making just an offhand comment about all the problems with evolution. And that was the first time those two thoughts had collided in my head. And what do you mean the problems with evolution? And so I started, researching that, and boy, that was a real eye opener. That was, years of strongholds starting to come, brick by brick, when you start to understand, oh wait, yeah, I guess if I'm gonna believe this book, like I can't believe the same thing that evolution's been telling me. And so that was instrumental. And then part of a small group that we were in, really small group, it was really just us and another family that, we've always felt like misfits. We've always felt like even within the church, we've always felt like we were just on the fringe of the fringe, So it was always very hard for us to find other like-minded people. And so most of our small groups have been really small. But it was us and one other couple, and we were reading through Genesis, and I expressed concern with the flood narrative, and I'd started to kind of let go of evolution, but I had all the questions everyone always has when you hear the flood narrative and you're trying to think about it literally, and the husband of that group that we were meeting with just gave me an article from Ken Ham, explaining, how we could think about the floods logically. And it was a big, long article, and it had all of it, the case study for how many animals you'd need to have, and really breaking down the size of the ark and the time and all of that. And that was just so fascinating to me. And I was just hooked from that point on. And so, immediately started subscribing to Answers in Genesis and just reading everything I could get my hands on, and have always been, since then, just really fascinated by studying his creation and how there's so much that he reveals about himself in the way that he's done it, which always made so much sense to me as an artist, because an artist can't help but reveal a little something about themselves, in not only in what they make, but how they make it. And so that just really spoke to me. And around that time as well, I was really convicted by Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 about lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. And I just remember thinking, well, art is one of my ways, and so I guess it should be acknowledging him. So I remember just kind of, throwing up a silent prayer there that, well, from now on, it's going to acknowledge you. So I just kind of give this over to you. You've given me this ability, so let me just give it back to you. And from here on out, I'm only going to make stuff that tries to point others towards you. And that has just been, extremely gratifying as well too. So it's been a multi, kind of two halves of the brain. And sometimes I know people find it very odd to hear an artist and a art teacher talking to them about science, but boy, there's the two things that I've really enjoyed.
That's awesome. I don't think I've ever heard your full entire testimony. So now I can totally see why everything that you do at Creation Club is so impactful, because you're taking, everything that you dealt with as, ignoring God and going more the agnostic atheist route, and then putting that all into your work currently, just to show and express what a creator and creation we have. It makes sense. I love it. Ties it all together for me.
Yeah. And one thing that I wanted to bring up and maybe get your opinions on this. Liz was definitely that Left Behind junkie as well. She was getting all those books, and that even led to us when we were youth leaders hosting the Left Behind.
Yeah.
We'd get the movie poster
when it first came out,
and then put the movie poster on the bulletin board and all that, or give out free tickets to go see it in the theaters, right? I mean, we were all about that stuff because that's all we kind of really knew at that time. And one thing that I would like to maybe spend a little bit of time talking about, because we're talking about the rapture here, but how this can apply to just generally all these topics. I mean, you don't subscribe to the pre-trib model, as you already said, but the book was instrumental in presenting the gospel to you, and you were able to see that and accept it, right? And so perfect theology isn't the most always important thing, in all of our walks, because there's so many different schools of thoughts on this or that. And maybe we can spend some time addressing that, because, he can use, clearly, he can use teaching that's not correct, right, in some way to lead people to him or stand there. I mean, one of our speakers, I'm so excited for you guys to meet live, is Doug Krieger. And Doug Krieger was a part of the pre-trib teachings for over 30 years before he abandoned it and left.
Isn't he really good friends with Tim LaHaye?
And he's great friends with Tim. Yeah, he's friends with all these guys. And he was part of that. And to say that, Yahweh wasn't working in his life or wasn't using him, as we often, think now that we've come to these big revelations of what we know of truth, and we know the proper way to obey, and we know this, and we know this truth about creation or this or that, right? And then we want to put down everybody else who's on a different path and saying that, they can't be used. And I think that's something, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that's something that I want to stress, a take on the world, because we do have room for growth and bringing in people who may not be on the 100% same page, as long as they're not condemning or going against, some of our standards. But maybe, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree 100% that the Father can use so many different resources to reach someone where they're at. And that starts the necessary process of growth, the necessary process of sanctification, of gradually becoming more like the Son. And so I agree that proper theology, quote unquote, is not all that important, in that we should we should hold to most points, most understandings very loosely, so that there's a few key points that I think we unquestionably cling to, like the key components of the gospel message, that the wages of sin is death, and that, Yeshua lived the perfect life according to the law, that his death atoned for our sins, that we are saved by grace through faith. These are the things that we don't waver on. But boy, just about everything else, I've always tried to hold on to very, very loosely, because I'm well aware of the fact of just how deceived I was for so long. I mean, I really identify with Paul in a lot of ways. Not that I think myself a great teacher, but that I was an active enemy of God, and he just did a 180 on me, And so I've tried to never lose sight of who I was and where I was at. And so everything that I put together, any kind of teaching, or I do a lot of writing online, I always have that person in mind, someone who maybe is still very much entrenched in that worldview, but has had their heart pricked and is maybe curious. So I've tried to always remain very approachable and very humble, and not ever come from a spirit of I'm waving a finger at you for having been wrong with this, because man, I've been wrong about so many things. But I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think any seasoned believer, anyone who's been walking with the Father for decades or more, would see a similar pattern in their own life. I remember my brother actually interviewed me for a paper that he had for a college exam or something, college class that he was working on. But he was interviewing someone who held a belief that he didn't have, was essentially the assignment. And he was asking me, I can't remember the gist of the question, but it was essentially, I mean, if you really believe that this is true, shouldn't you continue to be changing as you go, or something to that effect? And I remember and then he caught himself and he's like, well, I guess you have, because he's watched me and my family, especially in the past 4 years, come out of, Christmas and Easter, and come out of mainstream church and start, changing everything about the way that we believe and practice our faith. And it just struck me too at that moment that, yeah, that's really, if we are doing things quote unquote right. And I guess what I mean by that is, if we are genuinely and earnestly trying to believe what the Bible says and follow what it teaches us, then there should be a natural progression of change from our life as we are gradually and slowly being made more and more into the image of the Son. And so as soon as we become too steadfast in that, now I've got this all figured out, I don't need to learn anything new, I mean, our spiritual growth stops dead in its tracks. And so I think that's what's so fascinating, back to Chris's point, is that yeah, the Father can absolutely work through so many different avenues, because we are all ultimately under his direction one way or another. I mean, even the Pharaoh, in the story of the Exodus, was used mightily in accomplishing the will of the Father. So it's a humbling thing when you stop and think about that he orchestrated the movements and actions of other people's lives so that he could reach me. Wow, that's remarkable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one other thing, which is making waves throughout different communities. Your story of how you came to faith, and then you talked about how your faith has evolved or changed. We use the word evolve, right, in a creation club discussion, right? How it transforms. So many people are now throwing out their salvation experience, and only until they understand the fullness of his commandments, the fullness of this, now they're saying, well, now they're in a new faith, and they want to throw that out. And I think it's so important that our faith, that these are the understanding of his commandments and the different things that we get revealed is a sign of spiritual maturity and not a new faith. And that is so sad to see us throwing out the faith that just simply saved us when in your case we're atheists, or guys like John Pounders, and they were at their lowest points in prison, right? And I think throwing out that salvation experience just to cling and hold on to the truths we now know is going to be devastating to them moving forward. And and I'm so passionate about sharing that, because we see this constantly, it's just this constant theme we continue to see, because we have to leave. Once we leave churchianity, we leave this, and then ultimately we're walking away from that simple childlike faith that he's calling us to have and come to him. So
absolutely. And one of the things I would just add to that just grieves my heart so thoroughly is the way in which so many in the Hebraic understanding are really handling the word of God with arrogance. And what I mean by that is we are so quick to jump on other people who have yet to come to this understanding, and we're so quick to wave our fingers at them and to condemn them, and we forget that, for a lot of us, it was 5 years or less that we were in the exact same place. And so we cannot allow our faith and our relationship with God to become something that is strictly academic, meaning that I'm just compiling facts about this God that I know and claim to love, because we have to be so careful when our actions don't line up with that. Like, if we're compiling all of this information and then yet treating people with so much anger and hostility when they haven't seen it yet, man, we are not representing the Father well when we do that. And we're forgetting what I tend to believe is that people are not able to see this until the Father disturbs their peace and until he gives it to them. So it's like becoming angry at a blind person for not being able to see. It's not their fault yet, And so we need to I've tried to always share everything from the position of, man, if you love Jesus, you are going to love this, because it's all about him. And we need to make it enticing. We need to present things in such a way that it causes people to want to look in this, because no one is going to ever have their mind changed when they feel like they're being ridiculed. Mm-hmm. And there's just far too much of that going on right now. And we are mm-hmm. It's shameful that we would represent the Father in that way.
Yeah. Well, we're going to come back to that because we have something that which is going to be another one of your talks at the conference, and you're going to be talking about how you presented something to a whole congregation and how you did it and how well it was received. But before we move on to that, I want to take it back to creation and spend a little time there.
Sure.
Are you familiar with the whole movement within the body, where we see mainstream Christianity starting to teach, like from the likes of Pat Robertson, Hillsong, many Christian artists where they are throwing away the creation model and adapting evolution, Big Bang. The Genesis 1 is all about the Big Bang cosmology when God spoke, and evolution, which is proven from Darwinism, how we can fit that and merge that into the scriptures. So if you're familiar with that, I want you to spend some time as a teacher, why this is so important in training up our children, in understanding both realms, both biblical, what does the Bible truly say, and then what does the science say, so that they may not be led astray or fall into victim, like what
This
you're hearing on the
doctrine.
700 Club, what you're hearing, through these big, large mega churches. As a teacher, I think you're qualified to speak specifically on this and why this is so important.
Yeah, sure. And I guess let me preface that by saying I do have a few teachings specifically on this. You can just find Creation Club on YouTube. I also have a Creation Club page on Facebook. I have a few teachings, one called The Bible and Evolution, Investigating Our Origins, and it's a little over 50 minutes long, and it is really a pretty in-depth look at just putting those two worldviews side by side, point by point. What are some of the major beliefs, the foundational, truths, as proponents of those worldviews would have it, and just putting them side by side, and trying to hopefully highlight the fact that there's none of those that agree with one another. And so it becomes a very dangerous compromise when we try to merge them. There's also a teaching called Did God Really Create the World in 6 Days, that just takes a careful look at the 6-day creation. And again, the problems with trying to compromise that into an evolutionary worldview. And to me, some of the most suspicious things that should cause a believer, particularly a believing parent, is one, when you really start to look at what evolution teaches and what the Bible teaches, they are categorically opposed. I mean, they are complete opposite. So whatever God said, evolution literally says the exact opposite. And there's several charts that I've kind of copied and added to and shared in these videos, but even the order of creation, of what happens on the 6 days, and then the order of what evolution supposes happened, are again exact opposite, not just different, but opposite. And every single time you come to it, that's the issue. And so it is beyond the mathematical probability of coincidence that they would be that different. But from a strategic standpoint, if you are teaching against what your enemy says, then of course you are going to veer as far left from what they're saying as possible. And so when you see this point by point being the exact opposite, that should cause suspicion in the minders, especially when that's the only real tactic that the enemy ever has. I mean, that's what he did in the garden. Did God really say? It causes you to question what God says. And then I think the other major issue that parents and believers need to earnestly consider is that the mainstream scientific community, the forerunners of evolutionary science and astrophysics and all of that, are not just non-believers. I mean, it's one thing to not believe in God, but again, they are militant atheists. So not only do they claim to not have a belief in God, which is inaccurate. I have another video about that called "There's No Such Thing as an Atheist," but not only do they claim to not believe in God, but they are actively teaching against a belief in the Bible. They are encouraging legislation against it being allowed. And so do we really want to be trying to merge our faith with the teachings of men and women who hate what the Word of God has to say? I mean, there's a really well-known meme, and it's actually from the writings of, and I'm going to forget the author's name. Maybe it'll come to me in a minute. But he says there's two tenets of atheism, and one is that there's a belief that there is no God, and two is that I hate him. And that's what we see from these people is like, okay, if it's one thing to say I don't believe in something, I don't believe in leprechauns, but I don't spend any time trying to convince other people. If I met someone who believes in leprechauns, okay, so be it. Good luck with that. Have fun. I'm not going to expend any energy or contempt in the teachings against the belief of leprechauns. So there's something about that. There's a flawed logic in saying I don't believe in God, and yet I expend so much of my time and effort dogmatically teaching against him and spewing such venom about anyone who would believe in him. So, I mean, those two things, I think, are major issues with trying to merge those worldviews, is that all the high priests of evolution hate the God of the Bible specifically. And all of the teachings of evolution are point by point the exact opposite of what the Bible teaches. So once you start down that road of compromise, it becomes a really slippery slope of what then becomes the indicator to tell me whether I believe the Bible on this point or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I often like to quote Neil deGrasse Tyson because he makes it very clear that the Bible and science cannot be reconciled. They are vastly 100% opposite. We spend a lot of time talking specifically about the simple fact. I mean, look at the origins of the earth. They say that the sun came first. Our Bibles teach in the first line that the earth came first,
yeah, exactly.
and that the sun didn't come until day 4, right? Everything is off. Everything is opposite. It's backwards. And, it's very scary because, Christian churches are becoming so loose now on creation, and throwing out the first part of the book. And I say this, if you throw out Genesis 1:1 and believe that that's an allegorical, story that you can't reconcile, you look at John 1:1, where it says, in the beginning, the Word was God, and the Word was with God. And that word is the Logos. We know he's talking specifically about Christ. And I believe in the beginning is the same in the beginning that we see in Genesis 1:1. It is a prelude to both. And if you throw out one, you're going to have to throw out the Logos of John 1:1. And that's exactly what atheists do. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what the world is doing. And eventually, as Bible believers, we're going to have to do this as well if we start to throw out any parts of the scripture, specifically the creation story.
And I think so many students today that are in youth groups that don't understand this fully. Maybe the churches aren't really doing the apologetics like they used to. Mm-hmm. And these kids go off to a secular college and they're just bombarded. And it's so easy for them to give up everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've known many homeschool kids, many kids who've gone through youth groups, Christian schools.
We went to Christian school ourselves.
Yeah.
It was very strict. We learned directly from the Bible. And even at that, I would say there was probably half of our class. We had very small classes.
Who now adapt. Threw all sorts of, threw it all away, mm-hmm. or adapt principles. Because we can see that there's so many different layers within creation, and you're just going to adapt one while throwing out another. And that's why we believe it's so important just to take the word for what it says. And, creation, everybody's like, why is creation so important? Yeah. it wouldn't be important if he didn't start the book off with it.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the age-old questions of life. Where did we come from? Who created us?
Why am I here? What is my purpose?
Right. Those questions are the underlying realm of life. And, I think as Bible believers, we start to, oh, well, we already got that part down. But we forget that's so important to every other person out there who is in this journey, and, without really good ministries, without, and there's, we make no qualms about it. There's specific things in other creation ministries we don't agree with.
Sure.
They're doing amazing work who are breaking down these strongholds and allowing people to see the truth of his word. And so we applaud them for that. It's really a shame. We see people within our community start to bash
all the good work,
work all these people are doing. Just like what there's good churches who don't follow all of the commands of. They're ignorant to his feast days. They're ignorant to the dietary instructions. But to say that they're not doing his work and in service and feeding the poor and taking care of others and being servants,
reaching people with the gospel.
And reaching people with the gospel. Absolutely. And to say that they're not doing that, I think is a big fallacy and a big error within our community. Because I believe personally, we start to view everything conspiratorial, and we start to treat everything in our faith, how we treat all these conspiracies of the world and how we correspond with them. And that's exactly,
we're so quick to judge.
And we're very quick to judge. We're quick to, be angry, or quick to want to debate them, quick to do this, quick to do that. He didn't say you'll love me because you have perfect theology. He said you'll love me. And we know the end of the story of how he knows, and the fruits of the Spirit, right? All these specific things, how he's going to know if he's in us, right? Or how they're going to know if he's in us, are specific things and not perfect theology. So keep that in mind, everybody. None of us are perfect, and we don't even have barely any of the answers. So I don't know why you guys are watching.
I mean, and you're right about, that the mainstream church, unfortunately, is not only are we not equipping kids to be ready for the inevitable onslaught that is facing them as soon as they graduate, but unfortunately, there's all too much compromise. I mean, where you've got, I was just looking it up here, there's what's called Evolution Weekend or Evolution Sunday. This is now the 14th year that there's a kind of a nationwide, a lot of churches will have Evolution Sunday, where we're going to talk about how the Bible and evolution don't need to be at odds with one another.
Oh, wow.
And so not only is it just, it's now in some regards being actively taught, Pope Francis out and strictly said that he sees no reason that God could not have used evolution, and that evolution and the Bible are, in fact, in agreement with one another. And I know a lot of us as reformists like to fancy ourselves as not really following the Catholic Church all that closely, but that has a way of sneaking into our thinking when we see it on the mainstream news like that, and it is, and that's what's always scary to me, is because, and you're right, Answers in Genesis, do I agree with everything they teach? Of course not. You're gonna be hard pressed to put any two believers together and have them agree on every single point. Do I think that the vast majority of the work that they've done is beneficial? Absolutely, and it's commendable, and they're getting into the mainstream view in a way that no one else has been able to accomplish, and that's laudable. Unfortunately, yes, they still celebrate and teach many things that I don't believe in, but you know what? Just like I used to do things and believe things differently, I choose to hold out hope that maybe one day the Father is going to prick someone's heart who is in a much bigger spotlight, and they could really have a dramatic impact. But but they do a very nice job. Ken Ham wrote a book that, again, and this is still, it's probably more so, that 75% of all high schoolers who are raised in a Christian home walk away from the faith by the second year of college. 75%. That is terrifying. And if we're not equipping kids with answers to these questions, they are easy targets, and so, yeah, we have to present not necessarily both sides of the case, but we have to prepare them for the arguments that are going to come. You know what I mean? We have to prepare them to be able to strategically think critically themselves about what they've read, both from evolutionary literature and biblical literature.
Absolutely.
And not from a brainwashing standpoint, because that's what, if you get to spend any time with watching, YouTube videos of atheistic channels who come from a Christian home, the big word that they use is, well, we were brainwashed to believe this, and we were brainwashed to believe this. I think there's a way to reveal these truths, to present the other side to them, not in a way that they would choose, right? But in a way for them to be prepared to understand these arguments, for them to rationalize and think of these things in their own mind and seek these things, right? Because the Bible says, seek and you will find the answer, right? And that's where it stops, right? And that's why they will say they've been brainwashed. They never had that opportunity to seek this for themselves. They were just told what to believe. And anybody, whatever the topic is, if you're told what to believe and you just take what you've been told to believe, you don't own your faith.
Yep.
You don't, the only way your faith is viable is when you take it and it's yours. It's something you can grasp to. As parents, we want to teach our children so passionately and want them to believe what we believe. But if we have to do it in a way where it's they feel like one day it was brainwashing, or they didn't own their faith, they're going to be weak in that faith and they're going to abandon that faith. And that we see that all the time. So, doing youth ministry for all those years, our big thing was, even when we didn't know a lot of these truths, was encourage you to own your own faith. This is yours. This isn't the faith of your parents or your grandparents, even though you came from that. But this is your faith. You can own this. This is a relationship for you. And it's time for you to hone that. It's time for you to grasp that. It's time for you to run with that. And when they do, we find those kids to get stronger in their faith because it's theirs. They don't, when a parent lets them down, or a friend lets them down, or the church lets them down, or a scandal occurs, they don't walk away because their faith their faith is theirs.
Yeah, it didn't waver.
It didn't waver, right? And oftentimes as believers, we know, my goodness, we've been in all sorts of different churches or around different churches, and every church ends up with a church scandal where the pastor is having an adulterous affair, or they're doing this. And then all of a sudden people are walking away from their faith. How could they do this? Because they didn't own their faith. Their faith was based upon someone else. And kids are so susceptible to this. And especially coming from Christian homes, they're frankly brainwashed into these things. So, we have to do a good job of allowing them to seek these things while still maintaining the truth. And I know there's a lot of people out there who, let their kids just kind of figure it out themselves. No, we need to walk them. We need to guide them. We need to disciple those kids. And true discipleship starts in the home. And it's not forced. It's not brainwashed. It is truly a reciprocal type of thing, especially as they age. So I'm super excited. I think this is a great opportunity to talk about, Michael, you're not only going to be speaking to the adults.
We have you doing a ton.
And so parents, if you're not well versed in this avenue, Michael's going to be leading a session for the teens on how creation, and specifically a topic. I'll let him share that. So he's going to be doing some work specifically with the teens, and we'll talk about the art and all that stuff at the end. But he's going to be doing 2 different creation presentations. So I encourage you guys, if you guys are coming, get your kids to get excited about the teen program. We have so much fun stuff for them to do, but they're going to learn so much and allow their faith
and at their
to strengthen.
level,
Yeah.
at their level, so that everything is focused within that age group that they can use in their own walk and with their friends.
Yeah.
So
if you share a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Sure. So with the teens, I'm going to be walking through a presentation on evidence for the worldwide flood. Liz and I had spoke a bit that I'm assuming that the audience that's going to be in attending is likely already pretty well versed in, pretty savvy on anti-evolutionary thinking. So I thought perhaps better to focus on, let's key in on one topic and unpack some reasons why we can have confidence in the biblical account, and we can refute arguments, coming from an evolutionary worldview. And because all of the presentations do have a little bit of anti-evolutionary stuff in there anyway. But so this presentation goes through 7 key points that I have always felt are really rock solid proof that we can be confident there really was a worldwide flood. And I mean, that is a meaty topic in and of itself. I mean, we're not addressing anything with the ark or the number of animals or anything, just evidence that we have that we can observe now, because that is a key mindset. That's a key component of evolutionary thinking, is what are processes now in effect? Because the whole idea of evolutionary is that we should be able to look at what's happening now and reason backwards to assume what's going on. So I like to kind of present it from that same framework. Okay, what are some things we can look at right now that we can set our eyes and hands on that unequivocally prove there absolutely was a worldwide flood? So that kind of walks through 7 key points there that hopefully will be easy to remember and study more. And then, of course, you can always come back home and rewatch the videos or watch other topics. And I would encourage parents as well. I say that the videos are for teens, and that I originally created these presentations to present to teenagers in a high school classroom. But I don't think they are in any means watered down to where they're not applicable for an adult. So both adults and teens would be welcome to come to both of these presentations. But specifically, I'll be speaking to the teens, and then I'll be doing another presentation for the adults on it's called The Dust of the Earth, and again looking at evidence that supports the biblical account that Adam was created literally from the dust of the earth. And to me, that was a fascinating study, and perhaps even more exciting in that teaching is the fact that really this is one of those points where actually evolutionists are essentially saying the same thing with one big tweak to their understanding of it. And that's because the evidence is undeniable. We cannot, there's no way to reason out of the fact that there's an abundance of evidence that supports that we came from dirt. And so that I'll be sharing that with the adults. And then we had talked about, I don't know if it's going to work out, we talked about maybe having some screenings of some of the other videos as well, where people could just come and maybe just watch them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're still working on the schedule.
I can only imagine.
We keep working on the schedule on everything, but a lot of those things are so important, and they're so foundational. Mm-hmm. If you're watching this and you're on the fence about coming, I would say these topics, especially for because your teens can go to the adult presentations as well, so if they don't want to be part of the kids program the whole time, they don't have to be. Get them involved in this is so important for them. It's such a great apologetic, especially if you're new to your faith, new to any of these topics, this is a fantastic one. And this really starts off. I mean, we have so many other different angles of creation that we'll be talking about at the conference, what the Bible says about all sorts of things in regards to the earth. So I'm so excited for you, for everybody to really be a part of that, because creation it's a staple at Take on the World, not just.
Well, and this is probably our first year that we're really going in depth into these specific topics. And I think that's what's so exciting. Each year we keep broadening, who we're able to bring in and what we're able to cover. And this year in particular, I'm so excited for what these kids are going to be able to experience, and adults as well.
Yeah.
We just have so much.
Yeah. So if you guys are in the chat room and you guys are coming, this is for you guys. So please definitely go out, share this stuff with everybody.
Is there a question that popped in?
Let me see here. We will. Everybody's having a hard time finding you on YouTube.
Sure.
Yeah,
I will tell you, YouTube has changed a lot in their search.
There's another creation club, and I think it's a gaming kind of thing. But
yes, and that's what's pulling up. Yeah,
the direct link is if you go to youtube.com/C, as in for creation, so /C/creation club. That'll take you right to it. Maybe you could throw up a link in the chat or something. But youtube.com/C/creation club.
Yep. If Doc, if you want to get on that, if you can go back, and it is youtube.com/C/creation club. So if you can go find that link, get that link into the chat room for everybody, because everybody's asking.
Awesome.
Yeah. So now we're going to take it, because we're blowing through time here. Is going to be your second presentation. And before we preference what this next presentation will be, and which is such a passion of yours, because this was your next transformation in your faith, because dare do I say evolution again, is understanding some of those specific things that we talked about in regards of the commandments, and in regards of specific things that are all about Christ. And this ties into not only your artwork that you're going to be presenting, but I want you to share the story, and at the end, I want you to give the link. We'll post the link for this presentation. Or you know what? Maybe we shouldn't, because we want them to see it. We want them to see it live. So just to preface it very shortly, you did a presentation in front of a mainstream church on topics that most people in this community are getting kicked out for. And so I'd like for you to touch base on that, and how you presented that, and how well that was received, and what are we even talking about? So
Sure. So I live in Topeka, Kansas, and we're fortunate to have a thriving and growing arts community. And so there's a lot of effort from a lot of local businesses and churches and things to include artwork. And I've been very blessed by that. I mean, I went to a mainstream church here for a lot of years, and was very fortunate to be a part of some pretty big, kind of high profile locally events that allowed me to do, live paintings and coordinate a number of different things that, where biblical artwork were concerned. And so this was a similar situation where my best friend really here in town is also an art teacher, and we taught together for 9 years. He had been approached by a local pastor who wanted to do a sermon series called The Jesus I Wish You Knew. And his vision was that they were going to choose 5 words that kind of embodied the person and character of Jesus. And that each week they'd have a painting to kind of unveil, to sort of unpack that word and how it applied. And at first he was asking my friend to just do all 5, and he very quickly was like, there's just no way. So he started adding other names. So my name came up, and we got together and brainstormed and actually came up with a list of 5 local artists, all of whom I just think the world of. And we each took a word, and then created a painting associated, or inspired by that word. And then we got one Sunday where we got to speak to both services at the church and kind of unpack the content of that word and what it meant to us. And then all of those paintings were auctioned off, with the proceeds going to Trash Mountain Project, which, if you're not familiar with them, please definitely do check them out. They are a Topeka-based ministry that works actually internationally with communities living on trash dump sites, and they have done just absolutely tremendous work. So you can find Trash Mountain Project online, and man, the hand of God is just so clearly on that ministry. So everything about this was enticing to me, and I have to give so much credit to the pastor, because come to find out, kind of after the fact, he was entirely aware of my beliefs and how they do, on some points, differ from what the mainstream church tends to believe. And we were never given anything but complete creative freedom to do and discuss anything we wanted. I mean, we were given this word, and we were given a date that the painting had to be done by, and that was it. And we very much came away, and I remember him saying this specifically, like, just what a cool experience it was for him as a pastor, that, he feels like he's gained 5 brothers, and five new friends, because it wasn't all men. But I very much feel the same way. Like, I didn't really know the pastor beforehand, and now I absolutely consider him a brother in Christ. And we've been able to meet and kind of chew on some things since then too, that we both found fascinating. So long story short, the word that I selected was incarnate. So the 5 words were incarnate. Oh gosh, now I'm going to have to remember. It was incarnate, crucified, raised, seated, and now I'm going to forget the 5th word. But I got incarnate. So what does it mean to be God incarnate? And my mind just immediately went to our, relatively new understanding of the Moedim, of the fact that Jesus, or Yeshua, as I prefer to identify him now, is a manifestation of creation. That Genesis 1:14 talks about that, part of the reason the sun, moon, and stars were put in the sky were for signs and for seasons. That word seasons obviously means his appointed times, and how all of these appointed times prophetically celebrate the work that Yeshua was going to come and do. And they also look forward to future events, as well as looking back and celebrating different historic narratives within the Bible. And so they are such a meaty and fascinating topic. And again, if you love Jesus, you're going to love learning about the appointed times, because they're all about him in such a fascinating way. And so my painting is it's called Concerning Himself, and it comes from the passage in John where they were on the road after the resurrection, and the 2 of the apostles were walking with Jesus, with Yeshua, and they had not yet recognized him. And he's asking them what they're talking about, and they're like, "Where have you been? Like, all this stuff's been going on." And it says that starting with Moses and the prophets, he unpacks essentially everything in the scriptures concerning himself. So this whole walk there, he's telling them all about how all of these feast days that as Jews they've celebrated their entire life, they were all about him in ways that they didn't even fully understand yet. So he was literally telling them on the road about the Jesus he wished they knew. And so to me, all of that just lined up in such a great way. And so the painting features that, the walk on the road to Emmaus as sort of a centerpiece, and then the elements in the peripheral of the painting there's elements that point to each of the 7 major appointed times in a way that I hope, my hope for the painting is that when people see it, it becomes a conversation starter. And so even though the original painting has been auctioned, we are offering a limited edition series of prints. And I don't mean to make this into a commercial, but that's my heart behind it, is that we have 3 different sizes of prints that people will be able to purchase at the conference if they want, so that when this is hanging in your home, it becomes a really easy in to the conversation of here's how I can tell people about the feasts, and how they all point back to Yeshua. And so I got to share that, 2 50-minute conversations that were, again, I probably was over ambitious in how much I tried to share in that amount of time. But I was so humbled by the response, because just first of all, what a privilege it was to be invited into their church home to get to share about the feast. Like, just what a privilege. And then everyone was just so excited about it. I had a number of people coming up afterwards, and I've been in the church for 30 years and I've never heard anything like that. And that is by no means reflective upon me. That is entirely upon what the Father has hidden in his word, the treasures that he has hidden in his word. And people who really love him and his word, when they see it, you can't help but just be set on fire with it, with excitement, and just feel your spirit stirred as it hears truth. So I mean, that testimony, again, that's the tightrope I've always tried to be very mindful of as an artist, is that in making artwork, which is inherently an aesthetic object, meaning it's something that's meant to be looked at. I think artists constantly, it's a constant battle of ego, because every time you make something new, obviously you want to be like, hey, come look at this thing that I did, and I'm trying to make artwork that says, hey, look at my Father and look what he did. So I really want them to look past me and to him. And so that whole experience was I'm still just left with an overwhelming feeling of gratitude at having been able to be a part of something like that, and getting to share. And then now the video has been, shared just locally, really, I believe. But I've had a number of people that have told me that they've gotten into a conversation with someone, and then that's what they wanted to share, was the video of me kind of presenting the painting. So that really, that's pretty exciting to me to get to be a part of other people having their eyes maybe open to the truth of this.
That's awesome. So that wasn't the church that you used to attend. I assumed
No,
it was.
Nope.
Wow. That's even more amazing of a story.
And so, I hope you guys are getting excited for Take on the World 19. We have so many different things. And what I want to encourage you guys, if you guys are coming, this is your opportunity to invite someone to come. Maybe somebody who doesn't know about these things. And just the approach that Michael just had of how he could walk into a large church, share this, and people not be offended, and people receive it well, because when they see him in things, it's not going to come off strange. It's not going to come off, obscure. It's not going to come off heretical. It's not going to come off those way. When people see Christ in anything, they're going to see the truth. They're going to see the light. When we come with anger, when we come with the debating spirit, when we become with, I know more than you, you guys are worse than
fingers.
They're going to see everything that we're not trying to reveal. So Take on the World 19, we have so many different topics on all these levels. And I could tell you, everybody approaches each of their topics in these realms. Well, maybe not everybody. There might be a few that might be a little strict on some things. But overall, you're going to get that. You're going to get, this is a great event for people to, whether it be your kids to come or whether it be, a guest. So, I
Someone
really,
who's questioning.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
I feel like all the different speakers that we have in place can answer those questions.
Yeah. And so if you guys aren't excited to see that presentation, I know those prints are going to fly out the window. I know guys like there's one guy I know who's going to purchase it because he purchases and supports everything everybody does. He'll probably buy a couple of them so he can have one in each of his rooms.
Well, and I think it's amazing too for especially families who are homeschooling to have something like that, to really teach their children. I'm excited.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And so if you guys aren't excited already to come, I mean, this adds a whole new layer and a level from the creation to we're also going to be talking about the feast in the regards of Alan Aguirre, his book, The Feast Unlocked. He's going to be talking about that. So how to applicably do the feast. So he's going to spend some time talking about that. And so I think your guys' presentations are going to mesh really well. And so we've got so many things, and then we're going to talk a little prophecy in regards to those feasts at the conference as well. So there's going to be so many different layers in regards to the feast, which is so amazing, so cool. And I'm sure a lot of people will touch on it in many other different ways, because we talk about it in regards of, other aspects of biblical creation and, which is fascinating. We use those same exact passages. And if you guys haven't seen those, go watch our other shows, Flat Out Insights with Michael Solomon. We talk a lot about that. But, we're going to be wrapping up the show, but I want to spend time on the next aspect of what you do. So you're going to be talking about two amazing things. You're still not done. So Michael is, he's a teacher. And we've invited him to not only be a speaker, but to teach us and our kids art. And so he's going to be leading art for both age groups of the kids. So the kids program, the teen program, and then he's going to offer a class for if time permits.
And I'm sure a lot of the parents of the kids are also going to want to sit in on those sessions too, with the younger.
Well, I know there's already people saying, I want, and I know we talked to Michael, you can't really mix the two because the art is too vastly different to teach for those. So, we'll have to throw you, right now and tell you, everybody's asking, there's a good amount of people who want to do an adult class. So that we'll have to make sure, as long as you're okay with it, we'll do that. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the art that you do and in teaching? Do you have to be artistic to learn these things? Because people are wondering, well, I don't have an artistic bone to my body. I don't know how to draw. I don't know how to do this. What can you teach somebody in a class, and who should come to this?
So we'll be doing, for years, one of the treats when I was in the church was Vacation Bible School. And so I often led art camps, week-long art camps. So we'll be doing something along those lines, where a short hour-and-a-half workshop for the little kiddos, just doing some hands-on process art, meaning things that are more about the experience than they are about, a mind-blowing final result for those little kids. And all of that will also be something biblically inspired, so something where they're getting to do something that also makes them think about the Father, and especially will probably come home with a small devotional element to it, so that then mom and dad can at the end of the day kind of unpack what they did and have a conversation starter to where then it's an opportunity to go a little deeper with the kids in a space that's going to be more conducive to spiritual enlightenment than a room full of crazy 6-year-olds running around. So and then the same thing kind of for the teens is we'll do something a little more ambitious. Again, I think we're thinking like an hour and a half long workshop, maybe 2 hours. There had been talk about doing something for adults. I mean, I think the issue is, I often do, or I'm about to start offering biblical painting workshops here in my home studio where, we could in 3 hours, together as a group sort of walk through making a painting that would be inspired by scripture in some way, that then one, you would hopefully feel proud enough of it that you could hang it up in your own home. And again, in so doing, create conversations. And that's what really gets me excited is people learning to do something, but then, whether it's their artwork or my artwork, that hanging in your home, and then people come in and, oh, what's that about? And boom, then you're in to being able to share that. And that's the stuff that truly gets me excited. So maybe we could do something like that. Again, I know that funding is tight, so it might have to be where we put together a package and people could pay up front to cover the cost of the supply. So then it's not causing undue stress financially to the conference, because I know you guys already have 100,000 other things trying to keep track of. So, but I would be interested at the possibility of doing that. And then I'll also have a display of, an assortment of my own artwork that, that will be available for sale. And I try and have a lot of different price points to meet people where they're at. And of course, networking is, I think, the most exciting part of this too, so that if you do see some things that you like and it's just not realistic with all the expenses that you've already put into the conference, you'll know where to find me online afterwards too. So, and
how would people, when they leave with the prints, are they going to be able to roll those so they don't get damaged?
They will actually be mailed to you. So what we'll probably do is take orders, because the prints are produced by a Stephen Smith gallery, which is a gallery here in town, and it's run by a photographer who has 30 plus years of experience as a professional photographer here in town. And so they're what's called G-clay prints, which is just a fancy term for their super high quality reproduction. They are printed on archival paper, and they're printed with archival inks. So they're made to stand the test of time. And because of that, printing them again for the gallery is cost prohibitive. So they're printed on an ordered basis. So when one gets ordered, then they'll print it out. You'll get a certificate of authenticity, and it's a signed print, so it'll be hand signed by me. So likely at the conference, we'll just be taking orders, or you can, I'll give you the information to the gallery. So if and when you get home, you decide you'd like to order one later, then you can contact the gallery directly, and they'll ship it out. So that way you're not trying to, jam pack a print into your crowded van with kids and everything else, and risking it getting damaged some way. So. And it is a limited edition. I think there is 50. There's a full size, a half size, and a quarter size available. And I know it's. I am blessed that I've got a full size print, and that hangs in our front room. In fact, that's what I'm bringing with me for the talk in order to display. But our local fellowship. Sabbath Fellowship meets most of the time in our home. And that to me also is just, for me, that's particularly sweet too, that we're gathering on the Sabbath with this same painting in the room, just as a reminder of what we're doing. And we even have a Facebook group, just a private Facebook group for just our fellowship called On the Road to Emmaus. So I hope it's a blessing to people. Again, I'm not wanting to sound too much like a commercial here, but that's always been my heart behind it, is that I wanted it to be a painting that if people did get a copy, it would be so that the gospel could be advanced through conversations generated from the print.
Awesome. Well, hey, we've gone a little longer than we thought we were going to go with you, so sorry about that.
That's
but
okay.
I'm going to give you this opportunity. they put it in the description. But if you can give everybody where they can find your artwork, where they can find your YouTube channel, and where they can find you on all forms of social media.
Sure. My main website is just michaelmizeart.com. So M-I-Z-E, all one word, michaelmizeart.com. There is a link. There's links to everything else from there. So there's links to, you can just find me, Michael Mize, on Facebook. There's a link to the Creation Club YouTube channel. There is a page for Creation Club on Facebook, but to be real honest with you, I haven't done much with it in quite a while. So, but the videos are the main resource there. So you can go to michaelmizeart.com, and there is a Creation Club tab, and I think there's one video there, and then there's a link to go check out the others. I do have Mize Art Studio and Classroom on Facebook, but really that's kind of mainly just for folks local that are interested in taking classes and events that I have here in the studio in Topeka. So Michael Mize on Facebook and michaelmizeart.com is the most easy way to get a hold of me. And in thinking about it, before I forget, I've got a suggestion for you guys, like a great tagline for the secret show. You could pull in a little Matthew 24 in there, action, secret show, no one knows the day or the hour. Not even you guys.
Well, okay, so we'll tell you, with July 4th and with the time off of off of work, it made today crazy. And so we were scheduled to do this at 1:30, between 1:30 and 2:30, and we get a message at 2:30 asking if we're still doing it. We're like, oh, we totally forgot. So I mean, really, it is a secret to all of us all the time. And yes, no man does know the day or the hour, but those that are watching, they will know, right? So so we need to be watching, because then we would know. So I encourage you guys, go back, watch all 9 of our secret shows that we have done. And, they all have bits and pieces and elements of the conference that you guys are going to get to. And we're going to try to knock out as many as we can before the conference. And if you guys aren't asked to be on this, it's only because we don't have the time. So, but we will be. So we're going to try to squeeze in as many of these shows beforehand. But, I want to encourage you guys, if you guys are not able to come to the conference, try to encourage someone to, because they are going to get so much out of coming, whatever it may be. So please help us share this. We don't have a big platform. We are all grassroots. Everything we do, we don't spend very much on advertising, because we don't frankly have the funds to do that. So we rely on all your guys' help. So if you guys can share these videos, share our website, get out the word, that's how you guys can help us. People ask all the time how you can help us. Go and get these vinyl decals, very inexpensive. You can rock them on your car, your laptops, put them on your water bottles, whatever you can do. And it's a great, what does take on the world, light up the darkness mean? And you can lead with however you see fit at that point. So we've kept it general for that. So takeontheworld19.com is where you can go see all the speakers. And Michael, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And we look forward to fellowship with you live August 22nd through 25th. And everybody, you should be there as well. So, all right, we're going to end today. And any last words, Liz?
No, I think that's it. We cannot wait to fellowship in August.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and be blessed. Subscribe to our channel. Stay up to date, because these shows, just like Michael said, no one knows the day or the hour. They're just going to pop up. And the only way for you to do it, and I have 2 YouTube accounts. I was subscribed to Michael on that one, and as I jumped over in our new Take on the World channel, I wasn't even subscribed. So I just subscribed. So go subscribe to Michael's channel. That will encourage him to continue to put out more content. And so that's what you got to look forward to. So see you guys real soon, and be blessed, everyone.
Take care.